All right, so we're continuing our series this morning. We're in the third week. It's called From the Ground Up. The first week at the lap party, what we looked at is that God pursues us. So think about this. All of us who are parents, we're going to pursue our kids until the last of their days. We're just wired that way. So our Heavenly Father, who loves us more than we love our earthly kids, is going to continue to pursue us. So God pursues us. So what we get to do is we get to pursue God. There's many things that we can do to pursue God. We can worship, we can pray, we can join a small group, we can study, whatever it is, we can serve, whatever it is, we can pursue God. So when God pursues us and we pursue God, there's going to be intersections during our life. And these are going to be like these holy, sacred times where our life really makes sense. When the pursuer meets the other pursuer, great things are going to happen. Now, last week, what we looked at was the power of community. So God gives us each other. Not only does God give us himself, God gives us each other. So here, we looked at together. I mean, one of the things I do when I do weddings, I look at the couple and I say, one of the reasons you're getting married, whether you know it or not, is you believe, you really believe that the two of you can become more together than the two of you could have become separate as individuals. That's why we have small groups. I believe that 5 people or 10 people can become more together than we can become as individuals. That's why we have churches. I believe that all of us can become more together than we could become separately as just a bunch of individuals. Think about the Uganda thing we're doing. Chris could not do this by himself. He needs us. We can do so many cool things through the life of the local church because we believe that we can do more together than we can do separately as individuals. Now today, there's this calling by God. God is asking us, God is telling us to go meet people in the community exactly where they are and invite them into a relationship with him. Now, this kind of sounds scary for many of us, actually sharing our faith and, talking about, religion. But we're going to see that it's actually, this really cool process that all of us can do and any of us should do. So I'm going to go to Acts chapter 8, verse 26. We're just going to go through this verse by verse. Typically we don't do this, but this text just lends itself to this. So last week we looked at Acts chapter 2. The church had just gotten the Holy Spirit. The church gets started. So in Acts chapter 7, this is where Stephen was actually killed because of his faith. They threw rocks at him and killed him. Paul approved of this. So now all of a sudden the church is scattering from Jerusalem. One of the main reasons they want to spread the word. The other reason it just wasn't safe there at the time. So in verse 26, Philip is the guy we're going to look at today. So now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Go south to the road, the desert road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza." Okay, I'm going to take a quick poll. You have to participate, okay? If you've been to Lincoln, Nebraska before, raise your hand. Okay, so I think most of us have. Now that is going to be about 50 miles, to the south and to the west. Now Gaza is going to be about 50 miles to the south and to the west of Jerusalem. So it's going to be a pretty steep decline at first. Jerusalem, they call it the city on the hill. It's on top of the mountain. You're going to have about a 3,000-foot decline. And then it's pretty much going to be sea level the rest of the way. It's a 50-mile trip. They didn't have SUVs and off-road vehicles. They walked this thing, and Philip would have walked it. Now Gaza, though, Gaza is actually a pretty cool place. If you had to go somewhere, this beats Damascus, this beats Bethlehem. Gaza's right on the ocean. It would have been a trading city. It would have been a very diverse city. So, for Philip, Gaza wouldn't have been a bad gig. Now, my first observation, though, and I want you to look back at the verse. My first observation from verse 26 is that God is leading you to do something somewhere. Now, I say you, and I mean all of you individually. I mean me as a person as well. There's not a single person in this room that God isn't leading to do something somewhere with somebody. You have a purpose. You got different purposes throughout your life, and you have a purpose right now. In fact, some of you have more than one purpose right now. God is leading you to do something to somebody somewhere. So you need to know your life is not about you. Now, listen to that word. The first word in that imperative is go. Go south to the road. Now, yours isn't going to be to go from Jerusalem to Gaza. That's not going to be your calling. You know, Chris's calling was to go from Omaha to Uganda. Chances are that's not going to be your calling. You can go on the trip, but, you know, probably not to start this whole thing and get this thing going. But you do have a go. The Holy Spirit, God is telling you to do something to somebody somewhere at some time. So it goes like this. Go to that neighbor. Go to that neighbor that's going through this really difficult time right now and listen to them. You know, go to that coworker. Go to that coworker who is overwhelmed in so many areas of her life and give her some help. Go to that classmate. Go to that classmate that's alone. Go to that classmate that nobody else seems to care about and care about that person. You know, go on that mission trip. Go wherever. The Holy Spirit is telling us to go. You have a purpose. For somebody at some place at some time, you have a purpose. Now, the second observation I have on verse 26 is it's really interesting. Like, he's going to Gaza, but he doesn't even get down the hill, and all of a sudden, like, he runs into this Ethiopian eunuch, and like this is just a fact of life. Like, most of life's good stuff does not happen at the destination. Most of life's really cool stuff happens along the journey. Like, that's just the way life is. It's the way my life is. It's the way your life is. Like, I coached a soccer team for 7 years. That's a lot of soccer. You know, a lot of kids. Now, some of these kids were with me the whole time. Now, the destination here is like teaching these kids how to play soccer, teaching them how to be a team, you know, going out and competing and learning values in life. That's the destination. But it was really the journey. You know, it was the journey that was so cool. Yeah, I remember there was times when I would get phone calls. You know, so-and-so can't come. His, you know, grandma's in the hospital in Kearney. Well, do you mind if I pray for you? Can I do that? Yeah, will you please? That's the journey. Yeah, the journey is the kid, you know, messes up his ankle and has to go to the hospital. And, you know, the journey is, do you mind if I come and visit and pray? Like, I don't do that because I'm a pastor. I do that because I care. Like, you can do that. It's part of your journey. Like, my prayers aren't any more powerful or more heard than any of yours. I mean, think about it. I mean, like, there's this little swimming pool across the street from where we live, and the destination is taking the boys over there to cool down in the summer and have fun. The journey is, like, you just sit, like, right at the water's edge on the side of the pool, and you have a conversation, you listen to somebody's story, and you say something like, you know, that really stinks. I care about you. Is there any way I can help? Or, you know, I've known someone else that went through this. Is there any way I can connect you with that person? Or, you know, is there something specific that I can do? Or can I pray with you? And it's been weird. Like, I've actually sat next to someone at the pool. You know, these kids are playing dodgeball or whatever, and we're praying. Now, you can do that. Like, that's a journey. It's not the destination. You know, embrace the journey. So in verse 27, it continues. So he started out, Philip, he started out, and on his way home, on his way, he met an Ethiopian eunuch. Does anyone here know what a eunuch is? It's kind of a really weird, we don't have them in the United States. The Bible tells us what a eunuch is. An important official in charge of all the treasury of Kandake, who was the queen of Ethiopia. This man had gone to Jerusalem to worship. Now, what's really cool is, so who here has been to, Tampa before? Have you been to Tampa? Orlando, that'd be another one. You guys are a well-traveled group. Now, how did you walk did you walk or take a horse to Orlando? No, you took a plane probably. Maybe you drove at a minimum. So this guy, when he says Ethiopia in the Bible, like, it's not modern-day Ethiopia. It's like North Africa, but probably there was about a 1,500-mile journey from where he was in North Central Africa, or Northeast Africa, all the way up to Jerusalem. like just to hear about Jesus, just to learn about God. So when someone tells me they can't like get their two kids out of bed in the morning and make it 2.5 miles to church, I'm struggling to find a lot of sympathy here. If this dude like travels 1,500 miles by chariot, just to go to the temple and hear a little bit about Jesus, I think we can probably pull this off a little bit more frequently than we can. So look at those first. Can we go to the next? So we started out, the third line there. So we started out. Now that's got to be our story as well. So this is Philip going down the hill to Gaza. So he didn't question it. He didn't say, okay, I don't have enough resources, I don't have enough time, I've never been to Gaza before. He just started out. God told him to do something and he did it. So here's the deal. Like, you don't think you're good enough, you don't think you're qualified, you've never done this before. Remember what Philip did. He started out. So go to that neighbor. Go to that coworker. Go to that classmate. Go on that mission trip. Philip responded to God's call. He didn't have all the details. He didn't had all the resources, but he just started out. Now, I believe that many of us, including myself, have missed out on too many opportunities because we did not take that first step. I believe that many of us, including me, missed out on too many opportunities because we did not take the next step. Now, it was on the journey, not the destination, not when he was at Gaza. It was on the journey that he met this man. It was a eunuch who had traveled 1,500 miles to get to Jerusalem. Now, the eunuch, he was someone that he was a somebody. He would have been a very powerful person. He would have been like, the queen's right-hand person. And on verse 28, we hear the story continue. And on his way home, he was sitting in his chariot, reading the book of Isaiah the prophet. Okay, so where was he sitting? So he was sitting in his chariot. Now, the chariot, it was almost like a place of safety. It was a place of comfort. It was a place where he would have spent a lot of time, especially on a 1,500-mile journey, like at 3 or 4 miles an hour. The chariot would have been very familiar to him. Now, listen to what he said. He was in his chariot. So we have, like, what's our chariot today? We have, like, homes. We have kids' sporting events. We have desks that we sit at. We have cell phones that we interact with. We do something we love. So for some people, your chariot might be a golf course, or it might be a trail that you bike on, or something like that. So this is what the chariot is. Now, the Spirit told Philip. Okay, so Philip is the messenger. Go to that chariot and stay near it. Go to that chariot and stay near it. So basically how we interpret this for us, this is the second time there, like he said the word go as well. It's like this, like, don't expect them to come to you. You're the one. Go and initiate this conversation. Don't expect them to like leave their chariot. Go to them. Now, the next phrase is, he says, stay near it. Now, here in the Greek, this one's helpful. So what this means, it means to like glue, it means to unify, it means to like stick, it means to join closely or to bond. Now, this is cool stuff here. Like, go to their place, go to their environment, and stick with them. So what this means, it means care for them, love them, listen to them, become their friend, invest in them. So when I wrote my dissertation, a number of years ago, it was a dissertation on like public speaking and humor, and what I predicted was that humor would make the speaker more effective, and that was not the main finding of the paper, though. I had one of those accidental findings where my main thing was something that just popped up. And what popped up was this: the most important characteristic for any speaker is really how much the audience perceives that they care about them. So like if you give me like a bunch of nurses, 9 times out of 10, the best nurse is the one who cares the most. The best salespeople, these are people that care. They listen. Now think about this. Like this means something in our church. Like y'all demonstrated earlier this week that you care, and that's a very, very powerful witness. Now, think about this like in your interpersonal relationships as well. Now, are we caring for other people? And like I would say this, even if you are caring for other people, do they know that you care about them? Are we communicating this? It's that old axiom. People don't know how much we know until they know how much we care. And that's really what the Spirit is telling Philip here. He says, stay near it. Bond, unify, connect, listen, love, and serve. Okay, so verse 30. Then Philip ran. Isn't that weird? Like, when's the last time you've actually run to see somebody? Like, unless you're a little kid, it's probably been a while, right? Like, we walk. I mean, that's a polite thing to do. We walk, and if we're really excited, we might kind of walk quickly. But that wasn't in Philip's wheelhouse. He was so excited, he ran. He ran up to the chariot and heard the man reading Isaiah the prophet. Do you understand what you're reading? Philip asked. So I want to listen to those. Just look at those two words. Let's see where they are up there. And he heard. So look at the top of the top line, and heard. Just those two words. Those words were absolutely essential. We can overpass those pretty easily in this text, but those words are probably the two central words of the text, and he heard. What do you do when you hear? You listen. So what Philip did is, Philip wasn't about what do you speak? Like on Tuesday, I had to get up. I gave a 3-hour. If you guys think I talk a long time on Sunday morning, I got up at 3:30 on Tuesday morning. By 4 o'clock, I was on the road. By 9 o'clock, I was in Wichita. I talked from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Can you imagine listening to me for 3 hours? Just the joy and the satisfaction and the closeness that you would feel to God that entire time. It was crazy. The listeners may have a different interpretation of that, but so I drove back home. I was home by 6. I was in bed by 8 or something like that. But the first thing I told them, is I said the primary function of a preacher, it's not to talk, it's to listen. Because if you're not scratching where it itches, it's like reading poetry to a wall. You got to listen. You got to listen to their fears. You got to listen to the dreams. You got to listen to the stories, the successes, the struggles, all that kind of stuff. And again, the best nurses, the best salespeople, the best relationships. I really believe this. The best relationships are people who listen to each other. And we don't listen. I've talked about this before. We don't listen to respond. The reason why we listen is so that we can understand the other person. Now imagine if you're in a relationship with another person and you figure out that your primary task in communicating in this relationship is to listen to the other person. All of a sudden, we got this understanding that happens. Can you imagine what it would be like to be understood by another person and then to make it a primary task to understand that other person? These relationships would be totally revolutionized. So Philip, he was listening, but he wanted to listen more. So what does he do? He asked a question, and we can do this in our relationships as well. But Philip asked the question, do you understand what you're reading? So in verse 31, it goes like this. How can I, he said, unless someone explains it to me? So he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. Now, at this point, there's going to be more listening that happens. So when I was a graduate student in Atlanta, there was this guy, probably 16, 17-year-old kid. His name was Scott. And Scott lived up the street from us. And now we lived in a very nice street. It wasn't because I was a seminary student. It was because we lived with an orthopedic surgeon, and he was the founder of the Peachtree Orthopedic Clinic. And I was a graduate student in theology. I was a lawn boy and a pool boy. Those are my 3 main roles in life. And man, I do a mean pool still to this day. Cut the lawn, all that diagonal stuff. They were happy with me. And this guy Scott, Scott was from a very affluent family, but Scott just kind of wandered around. And a lot of times, Scott would wear these black clothes. He'd be skateboarding, and I knew this kid. I just knew that basically, he needed somebody. And we talked and we joked around. We'd go have pizza together. he'd stop by the house if I was outside, and like we'd play frisbee. And it was really out of my comfort zone to talk to Scott. The kids I was a youth minister to were up north. Looked a lot like what our church looks like today. And I wanted to witness to Scott. I wanted to invite him to our church, but I just didn't think it was going to be a good experience for him. He said he went to his parents' church once in a while, but he just felt like he didn't fit in. So what I did is I went and I found Scott a group that I knew he would fit in at. I had to do some research, and I actually talked to Scott about it. So go back to verse 31. Do you understand what you're reading? How can I, he said, unless someone explains it to me? So basically, what God is asking us to do is to speak the language of the people. Now, I took Scott, the guy that ran this group, his name was Jay Baker. Jay is the son of evangelist Jimmy Baker and his wife Tammy Faye. So Jay comes from a very interesting background as well. And I went down there, and I think I was wearing like these exact same clothes, like denim jeans and like one of these shirts that's untucked. And I like stood out like a sore thumb, but Scott, like, he fit right in. And when Jay and the other leaders were talking, like, they were speaking Scott's language. They were explaining it to him in ways that he could understand. On the way home, like, I said, so what do you think of that? And he says, gosh, it was really cool. Can we go again? And I, kept taking him down there, and it was so cool that, like, he was getting the gospel in a way that, he could understand it. So when we go out, what we do is we speak the language of the people. In verse 36, the Bible continues, as they traveled along the road, that right there is really cool. This was not a one and done for Peter, like Peter stuck with this guy. Or, I'm sorry, Philip did. They came to some water, and the eunuch said, look, here's water. What can stand in my way of being baptized? So look at those words, as they traveled along the road. Like, this is going to be like a key ingredient to us going to the places that God tells us to go. This is not a one-time event. It's not a one-time interaction. It's a process that God invites us to be part of. So there's actually a young man here today. He was in my youth group when I was a pastor in Iowa. It's really cool. He's an anesthesiologist now, and you probably remember, like, my house, don't you? One of the things that Amber and I did was we opened our house up to all these students. Sometimes it's like Grand Central Station. I'd go home, and my wife wouldn't be there, but the dog and 5 kids from the school would be there. And one of the things that we did is we just took the journey with these kids. I remember one time they talked me into. I was getting ready to say the word con. They talked me into keeping score at the high school basketball games. Now, this seems like a pretty easy thing to do, right? It's not. Especially like when a bunch of people are watching you. Like, they got that jump ball, possession arrow thing, and I remember the first time I did it, like, the dot said it was going to go to the home team, the little arrow on my desk said it was going to go to the other team, and, like, the referee looked at the thing, he looked at me, and I didn't want, 600 people to know that I didn't have a clue whose ball it was. So I was, really forcefully. And I remember the first time I went to the lunchroom there. I was 26 when I was there, and I looked like I was about 18 or something. So I went to the lunchroom, and it was one of the first days of school, and some of the kids had got in trouble, and they were all at this table. I didn't know that. I walked in, after they got in trouble, but before, they got their little sentence or whatever it was. And so the lunchroom monitor came back and said, this isn't going to be put up with this year. If you guys do this again, you're not going to have lunch or whatever. And then she looked at me and she said, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on you too. But I want you to think about that. I've made dozens and tons of mistakes over the years, but one of the things that we did there that worked was we traveled along the road. Now, you have neighbors, you have coworkers, kids, you have classmates, you have family members that they need this road traveled with them. And God is saying, I want you to go from Jerusalem to Gaza. I want you to take this journey with this person. Don't give up on them. Stick with them. Share your faith with them, listen to them, love them, serve them, do whatever you can do to help them. Become an investor of people. Now, the last verse is verse 38. And he gave orders to stop the chariot. So the eunuch gave orders to stop the chariot. Then both Philip and the eunuch went down to the water, and Philip was baptized. So the word baptized in the Greek, it's baptismo. What it means to be, it's immersed, it's drenched. Now you can do this. You don't have to, have water and a seminary degree and an ordination to drench or immerse somebody in God's love. This is a really cool thing, and we just see stories over and over here at the church. Let me do this. Who in here was actually at our first worship service ever at Russell Middle School? Just raise your hand. So you can see that there's probably 300 people here. There might be a dozen people that have their hand in the air. Everyone else has been invited. For some people it was a sign, for some it was a postcard, but for most of you, it was a person. And that person is now part of your testimony. For those of you who are in small groups, you're going to hear my story on the video this week about a girl who invited me to go to this meeting called the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So 25 years later, I have no clue where this woman is. But every day I'm grateful that she really believed and she invited and she took this journey with me at that point in my life. We have a guy here. You could probably, and they were actually talking about it after the first service, you could probably easily have 40 or 50 people that come to our church now because of this one man. No, this is his gift. He's just a natural at this. And he's found people that have invited other people, and it's crazy what God has done through this one man. Now you can do this. It may not be on this type of level, but we don't have to be everything to everybody, but you can be somebody really special to somebody. Just meet them where they are. Love them, serve them, listen to their story. Make proper invitations at the right time so that they can be found in environments where God can do God's thing. There's many of you people that will, many of you are going to meet people that people like me will never meet. You're their Bible. You're the one that can invite them into a closer relationship with God. And that's why I think the next 8 or 9 weeks here are going to be so cool. As we keep building from the ground up in our individual lives and in our lives as the church. And I just want you to really think about, who is that eunuch? Who is that person that you're going to invite to a deeper level of discipleship? Who is that person that you're going to invite to introduce them to God? And I think one of the coolest things that we can do in life is to be part of somebody's testimony. Now, one of the really cool things I think about this church, now I'm looking out, and I know that some of you are very new. And this is totally your church because we believe here that this church is for anybody, and anybody means everybody. Now, if you're one of those 12 or 15 people that raise your hand and you've been here the whole time, this is your church. And you celebrate that this church is for anybody, and anybody means everybody. But the thing is, the kingdom of heaven, it's the most gorgeous, beautiful, crazy, incredible thing. And what I want to encourage us to do is invite others to be part of that. So let us go to God and let us pray.